Soania Mather.
And I'm Tim Haig.
This is the PD Avengers weekly chat. Today we're talking about the numbers of PD.
Uh,
There were some new numbers that came out, projections of how many cases of Parkinson's disease there will be in the coming years. By the year 2050, they're expecting 25.2 million people to have Parkinson's disease.
wow, that's a lot higher than we heard before.
Yeah, so if everybody remembers this book, Ending Parkinson's Disease, there's this graph. Ooh, you remember this graph?
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
Says by 2040, there'll be 12.9 million people diagnosed with Parkinson's. So we're at 11.8 right now. So
right,
it's happening even faster than they were projecting just in 2002.
right. So why do you think that is? Why is it so hard for us to get a clear number and clear projection?
Well, I think diagnostics, I mean,
Mhm,
people aren't being diagnosed as great as they can be around the world. I think
mhm,
some of it has to do with people not being able to um, not wanting to come forward with their symptoms.
mhm, mhm.
Um, and then
Yeah,
I think the other part of it is it's such a delay to get the information. Like when people do surveys, like the Bill Gates Foundation does a survey, it takes them 4 years to process that information.
right.
But by the time we get it, it's already old news.
True.
I
And
think there's so many different factors involved with this disease that it just complicates things out the yin yang. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking of people I know here in Winnipeg that are young, still working, been diagnosed, not telling a soul.
Yeah,
yeah,
And I don't find any fault in that, but it's a complicating factor to our overall numbers, if that's the case across the West, if you will, in
yeah,
developed countries. Then you've got lots of elderly folks.
yeah.
Elderly, I'll mark as 75 plus. My apologies to anyone, don't mean to be incorrect there, but 75 plus often don't, they're retired, they're
Yeah.
kind of done with that section of life and they're on to this part of life. And do they need to talk about it as much? Do they
Yeah.
want to talk about it as much?
I agree, Tim. I think that it's sometimes accepted to be a normal part of aging. You should
Yes.
take a little bit. That's to be expected. Go live your life and that sort of thing. I also agree with you, Larry. I think that it's often not recognized, even by physicians. Physicians have a bias still, even to this day, that this is a disease that affects older, usually white men in North America, whereas we're a clear representation that that isn't the case. So I think that lack of diagnosis is there, and then it's also the nature of the disease because the disease has so many sort of non-specific symptoms. Often people present with REM, sleep behavior disorder, or constipation, or mood changes, or the number of people I've heard that have gone for shoulder surgery
yeah,
because that was their first presenting symptom. So it's a hard disease to diagnose, and because we don't have the biomarkers yet it makes it even harder. So I think the numbers are hard to get in the first place. Plus, not to mention, like you're talking about, Tim, all the stigma that people face as well. And I think that can lead to problems in certain cultural, ethnic communities as well, because there's that kind of sometimes a stigma bias there as well.
it's a good point. I would also point out that there's no way to keep track of it. Like all
Mhm.
Yeah.
these states now are trying to pass these
Mhm.
laws to create these um, Parkinson's, what are they called, directories or whatever, so they can keep count of how many people in each state have Parkinson's. So then the federal government can know exactly how many people have Parkinson's. I mean, remember last year, it increased by 50% year over year because they got new data. So they thought it was 60,000 people a year, and then it was 90,000 people a year were getting it in the US. So it's just so hit and miss.
Yeah, I guess regardless of the numbers, the issue is it's a big problem.
Yeah, and
And
Tim,
our
you were talking about
population.
finesse earlier. Would you say, what was the quote, the stat you saw about multiple sclerosis?
Well, I had read that there are like 2.5 million people living with MS around the world. And I mean,
Yeah.
we don't want to get into a contest of
No,
who's the,
no, but it's interesting.
but it is interesting to note that there are so many with Parkinson's and the understanding of Parkinson's and the response to Parkinson's out there is still so modest.
Mhm.
We need people to tell their stories. We need people to get out there and share with friends and family and just live a life and ask for help and be an active member of your community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. I think we solved the problems.
If only.
Outline them, maybe, highlighted them.
Oh, we've outlined them. Gotcha. All right. You guys have a great week.
Yeah, take care.